Dr. Strecker, in your videotape, the Strecker Memorandum, you make some very strong charges and some very unorthodox charges. Would you give us a review of your points, please?
Yes, basically we maintain that the AIDS virus is a laboratory creature, or in other words, it's a product of a laboratory which didn't arise de novo in nature, but arose as a result of recombination of viruses, particularly bovine leukemia virus, a cattle virus, and Visna virus, a sheep virus, in a laboratory, and was spread either accidentally or intentionally as a result of vaccine projects that have been carried on around the world. Now, this was actually predicted as far back as 1975, when Jay Clemenson, who was a world-renowned epidemiologist, was speaking before an assembled group of leukemia experts. This was published in Bibliographica Hematologica in 1975, and what Clemenson said was, quote, "We are in fact establishing conditions for the pandemic spread of an oncogenic virus variant on the scale of influenza of 1918. What was he saying? He's saying that get ready. In 1975, he's saying that get ready because we're going to have the appearance of a cancer-causing virus that will spread on the scale of the influenza pandemic of 1918. And of course, that's exactly what is now occurring with the spread of AIDS and the other so-called human retroviruses worldwide. But Clemenson, in his article in Bibliographica Hematological in 75, went even further. And he said that this would occur as the result of a contamination of a vaccine by either an RNA virus or a DNA virus. And of course, what we have with AIDS is the worldwide pandemic spread of an RNA virus, which is, in the case of Kaposi sarcoma, a cancer-causing virus. So this whole problem that we're now dealing with was predicted as far back as 75, or perhaps even earlier. If you go back and look at some of the literature that appeared even before 75, in 1972, written in the Bulletin of the World Health Organization, for instance, in volume 47, page 257, there's an article there addressing the issue of making viruses that would have the capability of selectively destroying either T or B cells, which are the basic breakdown components of the lymphocytic system. The lymphocytes of the immune system are basically broken into two parts, either T or B cells. And so in 1972, in the volume 47, Bulletin of the World Health Organization, there's an article which says, let's see if we can make viruses that would have the selective ability to destroy these separate components of the immune system, particularly T and B cells. And it turns out, of course, that AIDS is a virus which does selectively destroy the T cell system of man. So here we have what we call, in a sense, the request for production of viruses that have immune depressive capabilities, and we know that they have, that was intended in a sense from the article, because after the request is made, it goes on to state basically that these viruses would be useful in promoting certain types of infections, such as murine leukemia or hepatitis or subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, and they name a few others. So we have what we consider sort of a request for the production of the problem that we have. We have the prediction of the problem that we now have. And so when we got into investigating this actual problem, one of the questions that we next asked ourselves was, well, is this in fact a creature of nature, or is it a creature of the laboratory? And to determine that, we had to determine for ourselves where in fact this virus came from. Viruses just don't appear out of the blue. I mean, since we've done away with the theory of spontaneous generation, I mean, viruses come from somewhere else. So you must ask yourself, what do the genes of the AIDS virus look like? And my brother and I, when we began investigating this question, discovered that the genes of the AIDS virus look like two other known retroviruses of animals. And those animals were not, in fact, primates, and they weren't, in fact, humans. They were, in fact, cattle and sheep. And those genes look like viruses that came from either bovine leukemia virus of cattle or Visna virus of sheep. So if you break apart AIDS, it breaks into these two categories. So we ask ourselves a simple question. Could you make an AIDS virus-like agent if you, in fact, cross those two or amalgamated, say, bovine leukemia virus of cattle and Visna virus of sheep. Well, at that time, several years ago, we called up many experts who said, no, that's not only impossible, but no one would ever do that sort of thing. Well, we went to the library and we ran a Medline search, and sure enough, we discovered the fact that there was a virus, which was named bovine Visna virus. And this virus, in fact, looks like the AIDS virus. It sort of walked like the AIDS virus, and it talks like the AIDS virus. And in 1975 or so, in a paper published from Cancer Research, when they fed bovine leukemia or bovine Visna virus to chimpanzees, those chimpanzees died of pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, which of course is the hallmark of AIDS and has been since the beginning of the pandemic. So we had, in this case now, not only the prediction and the request, but we had what we thought was the mechanism how you could produce this virus. And this virus didn't come from monkeys, it didn't come from apes, it came from the laboratory recombination of bovine leukemia, in our opinion, and Visna. Now, of course, one of the topics that brings to mind here is the discussion of whether or not this was actually a construct of humans in the laboratory. In other words, did scientists take apart this virus and splice it together with this virus? And that's an argument actually used against this virus coming out of nature, I mean out of the laboratory, because they say that those techniques were not available in the early 70s. But actually that's an argument for this being a man-made virus for the following reasons. We use the illustration, if you had a baby with no arms or legs, and the baby got dressed up in a tuxedo and went to a party in Beverly Hills, it didn't do it by itself. Now, if you tell me that this virus is incapable of manufacturing itself, then of course somebody made it, and that's, you know, everybody's agreeing, it's just a matter of who did it and where. So we believe actually that the virus engineers itself, and that engineering would have occurred in a laboratory, most likely, not in nature, because the components of the virus look like viruses of cattle and sheep, and those don't get together in nature because basically cattle don't exchange parts with sheep.
Dr. Strecker, we may at this